And one thing I think is left is variation that was very popular for a number of years. It was going on and off with the popularity. It's 4-pawn attack, e4, d6, f4. Now, let's look at it quickly. We castle, knight f3, c5, d5. Now, what do we play here? We go e6, black goes bishop e2. Here, I would say we take e takes d, and white has two ways to recapture the pawn on d5. One is with a c pawn, one is with an e pawn. I do not recommend e pawn for white. I think it's simply a bad continuation, because we're going to go bishop, rook e8, and on castling, bishop f5. This is very good position for black. White may try knight h4, which may end up catastrophically for them, because knight takes d5, and it seems like white is going to win material but lose the game. Knight takes d5, queen takes h4, knight c7, and knight c6. And here, interestingly enough, white has a choice of which rook to take, and amazingly, 90% of the people would take, of course, take the a rook, because that will drive black rook on a8. But no, white must take the e rook and also have bad position. But if they take a rook, then they simply lose on the spot after bishop d4 check, king h1, and bishop f2. Now there is no defense to bishop g3 with mating attack on the king side. White has no defense. Position is totally lost for white. After rook takes f2, queen takes f2, and white is lost. The different picture would be if white took the rook on e8, because then we're going to go bishop d4 check, king h1, and now we must take this rook. Now bishop f2 doesn't work because of amazing shot by white is bishop g4, and of bishop takes g4, queen takes g4, followed by knight f6 fork. So, but this is a really bad position for white if black simply plays rook takes e8. Now you see black has pawn for exchange. Black has knight and a pawn for white's rook, but black's pieces are totally dominating. White's bishops are very passive, and black totally owns big majority of the board. Position is nearly lost. Knight b4 threat is very difficult to meet, and it's not something white should allow. On top of everything, bishop f2 remaining as a main threat. So let's go back now and look at another continuation for white. At a different continuation. Well, that's what happens if white actually plays. Well, let's go back to the position where white played f4. Black goes castle, knight f3, c5, d5, and e6. Now, bishop e2, ed, and now cd. I would recommend a very simple way for black to play, avoiding sharp variations. And that's bishop g4, and when white castles, simply knight to d7, and after h3, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3. Now, what is this position? Black has stopped white from e5 attempt. They gave away light square bishop because light square bishop would have had difficulties participating in the game when knight is on d7, and black forever stopped attempt of e5 by white. They can go here even rook e8 and slightly try to play a6 and b5. If they are stopped, then try to play c4 and knight c5, playing for b3, d3 squares. That's the general plan that should give you a comfortable position. Well, you see, white cannot go e5. White should just continue development, and we have concrete plan. Go rook c8 and c4, or go c4 right away if you can, and on queen e2 you may go rook c8 and then go knight c5. You have very active position. One other variation I want to mention here, actually it's kind of old variation, but it was never part of the theory. It was old. I was analyzing it several years ago, and if white tries to play a little bit differently in 4-pawn attack variation, castle, knight f3, c5, and here d takes c. Well, what should we do then? We're going to go queen a5. Now c takes d is not good because knight takes e4, and knight takes e4 has to be stopped. So bishop d3 is the normal move, and black goes queen takes c5. Now white has to castle short. How can they do it? By playing queen e2, bishop e3, and the castle. After queen e2, what we can play here is simply knight c6, developing, bishop e3, and queen a5. And if white castles, knight g4, and of bishop d2, it's okay to play queen b6 check, and queen takes b2. Black's queen may get trapped there, but it's okay. Black has more than sufficient compensation. Well, white has to play rook b1. Now, rook a b1 or rook f b1? Rook f b1 is weak because of queen a3, and if knight b5, queen takes d3, and followed by knight f2 check. So what has to be done? Played rook a to b1, and after queen a3, knight to b5, and then we go queen takes a2, and now e5. e5 move is played to enable rook a1 threat to shut the black's dark square bishop. So after e5, black plays d takes e, and rook a1. Queen takes a1, rook takes a1, and e4. This position I would evaluate almost winning for black. White has to play, rook is hanging on a1, either rook a3 or rook f1, only two moves. Rook must be saved, but also after e takes d3, you gotta make sure there is no knight f2 check and fork. So if white goes rook f1, e takes d, queen takes d3, same thing would have been on rook a3, bishop f5, and now if queen moves back, you see the material is black has rook, bishop, and 2 pawns. This by itself is more than sufficient compensation for a queen, and on top of everything, they have very powerful pass pawn on a file, which is going to be very difficult to stop. Actually, after a5, white has problems that I don't think they can solve. a4 and a3 is the direct threat, and plus you have material compensation. On top of everything, you can go rook f to d8, threatening bishop d3, in my opinion, black is winning. So this gives you the arsenal of weapons to play against 4-pawn attack. And I gave you all these continuations and possible variations for white in so-called random order, but they are not connected, and if you play them, you have to understand general ideas. Well, of course, you have to know the correct move order too, and then you're guaranteed to get very playable positions. It does not guarantee you a win or something or a draw, but that's part of the game. Game wouldn't be interesting if the opening gives you a forced result. So you play these positions and you can fully explore your capabilities. You're going to get good positions in the opening. So good luck with it, and I'm sure you're going to do well with King's Indian.